anyone who's listening to this is like, fuck you, why are you talking shit about me? We love how competitive you are. We are here to be that other voice. Hold on to that. Hold on to the competition. Be fucking petty. Be crazy about it. We see our examples of the best athletes in the world. That's why the coaches can be there to be like, let's take it easy. So don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Just make sure you have someone in your corner that is going to say to you, hey, we're working on this. We're working on your aerobic engine right now. And yeah, your Fran time or whatever isn't what it could be, but it will be again next year. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full goon squad in the house. Gentlemen, I am fucking pumped.
Whoa.
I'm fucking pumped.
Why?
Well,
Drew.
So...
Boy, so much spirit in that question.
The beginning of this podcast is all about proper fuels, new product, proper pre. Now, there are two avenues here. We have, you're listening to this because you're interested in purchasing the product. Ted, Sherb, and I are minority owners in this company. I designed the product myself. Or you're listening to this and saying, what should I be taking pre-workout? When you work on something like this, both from like Sherb remembers my disgusting tasting pre-workout that I used to mix at the front desk in a mason jar, worked very well. Taste not so great. So Sherb remembers it all the way back to that, to Ted and I working on the label. There's something about working on products like this and having them show up and like be here in person that's so exciting because it's been so long. And although, again, this might sound like just an advertisement, this is a bit of a selfish pursuit for me, both from my personal standpoint and then athletes that I work with. We were approached by some people who are essentially business mentors of ours and members at the gym about potentially starting a supplement company and sort of given the keys to the castle in terms of like, what should an athlete take? Like, what do you think should be in there? We'll figure out pricing and logistics and funding and all of this different stuff. But like, what is the product? A serious athlete, what should they be taking? So from my perspective, going into that, I don't have to, it's not like, can I sleep at night? I'm peddling, quote unquote, a proprietary blend or something like that. So it's kind of a perfect scenario. Obviously, owning the gyms and Sharpen the Axe and Misfit, adding something like this to our plate, just wouldn't have been worth it. I wouldn't have been interested if it was, sorry, that product you requested is $75 to make. We're gonna have to charge $150. Let's knock those numbers way down and just get something out there.
Well, a bit of an origin story here too. You're talking about making the mason jar at the front desk with 15 different potions and like, how am I going to get the right like calibration of ingredients? One of the big gripes that we have with supplements, and the reason why we don't talk a bunch about supplements in a lot of our podcasts, is that like, before these products, there weren't things on the market that had everything that you needed all in one. And instead, you were being sold the idea of like, hey, if you take creatine, this product has creatine in it, you might get some benefit, but there's no mention of how much you need to actually get an effective dose. So what I'm most excited about is that there's actually science that backs this product as opposed to, and science that says you need this much of that ingredient. And the difference between us and our competitors is that there is that much of that said ingredient to get the intended benefit that they're claiming is on the label. It's going to make you jump faster, lift more weight, all those things, jump faster, jump higher, excuse me. But all of those things that they claim are backed by science if they're at the specific dose, which is the main difference between our product and our competitors.
Right. So essentially how we're going to work this, 6 ingredients that you should be taking in your pre-workout.
Couldn't be 7.
Sorry. Dude. Well, if we want to split out the electrolytes, it's 8. So then, no,
never mind.
The answer's still
trying
no.
to stick with my like patterns of 7s,
Water.
7 ingredients.
7
Boom,
ingredients. Actually, you know what?
I mean, that is an ingredient.
That is the ingredient. All right. 7 ingredients you need in your pre-workout.
You don't need it. You're a champ.
If you don't, well, doesn't matter. Properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. For the people out there that are already sold because they love Proper Recovery, we are going to be bundling these products so you can go in and get a discount if you purchase them at the same time.
Solid.
I will preface before we get started, we have a stim and a non-stim version. So the final ingredient and the final thing that we're going to talk about is caffeine. nature's pre-workout, one of the greatest supplements there is. And it's built into your morning cup of coffee, which is great. You'll hear all the benefits of that. And then obviously we have the normal version. So we can't preach the lifestyle stuff, the Misfit Project stuff, and put out a product where if you're going to take it at 3 p.m., you're not going to sleep. You got to get your sleep dialed in long before you worry about what supplements you're putting in your body.
Absolutely.
So, number one product or number one ingredient and the additional 7th ingredient, water, electrolytes and water. We are looking for magnesium, potassium, sodium with 16 ounces of water. Some really good research on what happens when you ingest 16 ounces of water all in one shot, pretty close together. I don't think you have to chug it. I do because I'm a hardo. I also chew my pre-workout because I heard that or my protein shakes. I heard that helps with digestion. So you don't have to be as ridiculous as me. But we start with that basis because if we head into a workout without adequate hydration and electrolyte balance, I mean, why are we even going to talk about that?
Yeah, something we talked about with our recovery product too, but as soon as you start to get 1 or 2% dehydrated, you see like a 10 to 15% decrease in power output. So like if you go into your session dehydrated, you're not going to be able to give your full amount, which is essentially why this product started with, can we make sure we're hydrated? Something we talk about both pre and post workout, but specifically pre-workout. The idea behind your pre-workout is to get all you can from your session. So if you're not hydrated into it, you're not going to give your full, intensity in that piece. And I mean, I think electrolytes have had a good campaign manager for the last, billion years. Yeah. But aerobic exercise, muscle oxygenation, and anaerobic capacity all significantly increased by taking electrolytes. So 16 ounces of water and electrolytes, that should be the basis for getting started with what you should ingest pre-workout. Next is a very well-known supplement, branched chain amino acids. The big issue here is not in that most people know aerobic exercise, fatigue reduction, fat oxidation, reduction in rate of perceived exertion. So even though you're doing better in a workout, you feel like you're not going as hard, pretty good, and improve reaction time. I think most people believe in the efficacy of amino acids in general. Think about, muscle protein synthesis we've talked a lot about, and protein's the least vilified of the macronutrients. But the big thing here is that there's 10 grams of branched chain amino acids. So we're going through the research and we're looking at the papers, the white papers on this stuff, and we keep seeing these higher doses, and that's how they're able to get these results. That's what we're going to put into the product. So again, you can go out and buy amino acids. This is one of the reasons why homemade pre-workout tastes so shitty. When you work with a supplement manufacturer, you work with someone who's understood what sort of flavoring you put into something to counteract, acidity or bitterness or, sort of whatever that is. So 10 grams of branched chain amino acids. That's quite a bit beefier than the normal. Well, I remember us taking it back in the day, and you're taking 3 grams, typically 5 3 to 5, and you're doubling, tripling up your thing. And next thing you know, what's nice about getting the BCAAs is they typically also come with caffeine as a pre-workout. And next thing you know, you've had 17 cups of coffee at 2 PM, and you're wondering like, awesome, I got all the BCAAs I need, but now I'm jacked. I'm not going to sleep tonight. So like the trade-off there isn't necessarily great. So to me, that was one of the things that separated our product as amongst everybody else, is that research looking into that minimum effective dose and what really does move the needle. And, if they're looking for the absolute best dose of that, we're looking kind of at a minimum of 10 grams of that BCAAs.
Yep. And for my morning workout warriors, our 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. class here at Misfit Gym Portland is beefy. There's a lot of people in there, and it doesn't really matter for a lot of people whether they're into fasting or not. The idea of waking up at 3 a.m. to eat your breakfast so that you don't puke it up during.
That doesn't sound nice.
During that horrendous
3 a.m.
During that horrendous 1K row that you guys made us do.
Easy.
Branched chain amino acids are one of the greatest things that you can do if you know you're going to go into it working out on that empty stomach and want to go into it coming out the other side with, building lean mass and getting into that muscle protein synthesis. So this product is definitely the stimulant version, or even the stimulant free is great for like how do I tell my body I'm about to like get after it and do something without, Thanksgiving
It's almost
dinner.
like it's how do you feel yourself without fueling yourself? Like if you put too much in your stomach, we all know that experience of, I ate too close to class and now I feel like nauseous halfway through my intervals. And you don't want that. No one wants that feeling. Everyone knows what that feeling is like. So like you're saying, you can get a little bit of, fuel in your body, prepare it so it has what it needs to kind of recruit the tissue that it needs. But outside of that, you're not sitting there, doubled over the trash can because you decided that like, a cream cheese bagel at 4 a.m. was the best thing before your row sprints. Is that what you have, Hunter?
Yeah.
If you're a basketball fan, you know what the 6th man of the year award is. It's the guy that the unsung hero who comes off the bench and,
Williams
does the, does the most for their team. I would say the 6th man award within this goes to Citrulline Malate, and not because like it should be a starter, but most people don't know, or maybe it gets a little nervous when it is a starter and it needs to be put on the bench. But I'm gonna read all of these bang, 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 just to prove a point. Okay. Now, what's really great about this is when we go in and do the research, the website that we use that aggregates all of the white papers, they also put in the things that don't work. The things that are either maybe sometimes or even the opposite, have the opposite results of what people thought. They think it's going to increase this and it actually decreases it. So we have the studies that go in and say, okay, the rumor is that it does X, Y, and Z. And yes, it does X, but Y and Z, we can't replicate any sort of study. It's a no-go. And I think it's worth it to say that there aren't that many supplements that do a whole lot. And while this is an all-star list of supplements that will actually help you, they're the exception to the rule. So many supplements that are out there do, according to the research done on them so far, next to nothing. So we have increased power output, major fatigue decrease, nitric oxide increase, plasma arginine increase, increased training volume, aerobic exercise improvement, improved blood flow, growth hormone increase, decreased muscle soreness, improved muscular endurance, and reduction in rate of perceived exertion. Not fucking bad.
I don't want any of those things.
For a little 6 grams of citrulline malate. Citrulline malate is sort of like some of the other supplements where we go in and we say, okay, a lot of people take arginine. I remember back in the day when I told it was like a physical therapist or a chiropractor that I could be a good competitive CrossFitter if I didn't have cupcake lungs. He told me to take arginine. I looked into it. I used to take arginine. The problem with arginine is that it does not turn into arginine in our body all that well. So the idea, the theory behind it of, 1 = 1 sounds like a great thing. The most proven way to up your arginine levels, which you're going to look at nitric oxide and increased oxygenation and stuff like that, is through citrulline malate. It's just one of those things that goes into the body, passes through the barriers that it needs to, and turns into plasma
like a
arginine.
Bioavailability thing, like your body can only process X amount of it at once, this sort of deal. Is that how that works?
There's just, I wouldn't say that I can tell you why I think it is, but I'll refrain from doing any of that in this. Our body just does, there's so many things where it would be nice that if you took it, it just turned into that thing in your body, but our bodies don't work that way in a lot of cases. So our number one way to improve that is through citrulline malate, 6 grams, the Lou Williams of supplements. The next one would have needed a lengthy introduction. I don't know, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago.
Thanks, Fraser.
Now, supply chains are disrupted the world over, and beta-alanine in a 5 gram dosage, which improves muscular endurance, anaerobic running capacity, fatigue reduction, and helps with lowering body fat and increasing lean mass. It works really fucking well.
Yeah.
It always has. It has forever. People don't like that you get the flushing from it. I will say, just so you know, in case you take the non-stim, people associate that vasodilation with a stimulant. That is not the case. You are not going to, the half-life, you're not going to lose sleep because you're using it. Your body also gets used to that feeling. the technical term is paraplasia. Sure.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds
nice
about right.
and flush. And I actually can speak to this too, because one of the things that we've been experimenting.
I tried to get you to take it forever. And every time you took it, you were like, I'm going to die. I hate this.
Oh, I did. And I definitely do not enjoy that like niacin flush, the tingles, the
I
things crawling your
don't
skin.
get it. I get it more mildly. I've noticed like normal serving size when I take this, but I've taken other beta alanine supplements and I'm like creepy crawly status.
Well, I've done taking
this
it
one
straight
doesn't
off.
give me quite as it's not quite as powerful.
Yeah, we used to do it right off bulk supplements on Amazon and do it that way. And I definitely noticed when that was kind of the only ingredient with some electrolytes that it bothered me more. And I've been taking this product consistently for about the last 4 weeks. And I've started to notice that like, my body has begun to get used to the beta alanine, where I still feel like I'm getting the effect, but I don't get the tingles, or at least they're not as intense after like a week or so. Like, don't get me wrong. I did not enjoy the first week, but that's just me personally. Some people really do like that feeling because it feels like they're amping up for something intense.
I love it if I'm going to do weightlifting or an assault bike sprint. There's something to that, like smack me in the face. It's time to go feeling. You're also going to notice, for anybody that hasn't taken this before, some days you get absolutely none of it. And some days it's over the top, and it just has to do with, that oxygenation and the vasoconstriction and dilation that's happening in your body prior to taking it. What have you had for activity? Have you gone for a walk? Did you already warm up, or are you going over there? Yeah, there's a lot of different things there, but it is perfectly harmless. And again, I like to use it.
Yeah, no, it's
to my benefit. I like to use it to my benefit. I'm talking about the feeling. Obviously, I like to use beta alanine. But
I like to use that for my exercise.
All right. The next one of the most well-researched supplements. Is it the top supplement in the world in terms of people take it?
Protein might be.
Creatine. So if you're thinking about taking the stack of the pre-workout and the recovery, we built it so that you get the dosage that we're looking for, 3 grams before, 3 grams after. And we've talked about this ad nauseum when it comes to what you should have in your post-workout formula. So I won't spend too much time on creatine, but as I read this list, just switch your perspective to pre-workout versus post. So we got improved power output, anaerobic running capacity, lean mass building, fatigue reduction, fatigue resistance, which is very interesting. Reading about fatigue resistance is cool. It's basically, it's sort of like that rate of perceived exertion type thing, but it's more just like you get to a point where, your heart rate is higher, all the metrics are there, and you're not having that internal battle as much. Like you are dying and you don't care, essentially, if that makes sense. Muscular endurance, testosterone production, and VO2 max. Creatine is a GOAT. Most people already know that. I believe from all the research that I've read and the, people from the community where they're trying to push rep in terms of bodybuilding, that it does belong in a pre-workout and not just a post-workout. Last but not least is the ingredient that is either in or not in based on whether you get the stim free. I keep both jugs near me and really hope that I get to take it before noon because I am a caffeine addict, but I won't let myself take it after noon. I can tell you there's a difference. you get a jolt. There's 150 milligrams that are in there. That's either a strong cup of coffee or 2 weak cups of coffee. I don't think it's necessary to talk shit about other products, but I will say that if you're looking at a company who is serving you 300 milligrams of caffeine or somewhere in that, and you find that there's some sort of green tea extract built in, theanine, essentially what they are doing and what some of these companies do is they give you as much of the addictive substance as possible, and they know that they can mellow that feeling out so that you'll have another serving, another drink, whatever, with something like theanine, which is in green tea. So you essentially metabolize it a little bit slower. You don't get the jolt. That is a problem in and of itself, but beware of anything that has really high caffeine amounts in general. But then the ones that you're really starting to see sort of a sinister, like, come on, have another bang energy or whatever it is.
Yeah, they're hooking into you.
Theanine being added to that is
have a taste.
Kind of scary in general. So
I didn't know that.
Don't do that. Caffeine. What does caffeine do? This is another great list, but we're all addicted to it. So do we need to be sold on this?
Yes.
Power output, anaerobic running capacity, increased adrenaline, improved aerobic exercise, blood lactate production, RPE reduction, testosterone improvement, increased training volume, blood flow, and oxygen uptake. Some really cool studies where they had endurance runners who thought they were bonking or starting to go off a cliff, take a caffeine pill or some sort of little gel, and they're off to the races in that. So luckily, with the way that our body metabolizes, you don't need to think about this from like an intra workout standpoint, especially within the CrossFit community. You can take something like this. So Proper Pre is it's out now. Properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. We've got the bundling going on there. If you're not in the market for this, we did the exact same process with our Proper Recovery, what we think people should be taking post-workout. This is a project that means a lot to me because, again, we are putting something out that we truly believe is going to help someone. And for me, it just wouldn't have made sense for us to put more on our plate with like, let's create some sort of marketing machine and hope it pays off. That's just not really our style. So, there you have it. Proper Pre.
One flavor right now.
One flavor right now. We got the lemonade. We did it's fun doing the taste testing and picking from the list. And this is a little tart. We could use this being a little sweeter. And I mean, like, I don't think anyone's going to change their decision based on this, but there will be more flavors if we sell more of it.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
kind of a standard business practice.
Is it beneficial on like, let's say an active recovery day or maybe a non-training day, to take the pre-workout, either stim or non-stim, because we know a lot of the ingredients that are in here don't necessarily need to be taken. Like the benefit to the pre-workout is that, you know, it helps you with the upcoming workout,
sure.
But the beta alanine, the creatine, those independently don't necessarily need to be taken. They will still like help if they're taken at a different time. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I don't think that most supplements should be taken 7 days a week,
right?
12 months a year. You know what I mean? That kind of deal. So, if you're going into, active recovery, long run, and you want a little bit of, pep in your step, I would say yes. But this product was designed to be taken about 5 times a week, in terms of I would say 5 times a week for your, general fitness enthusiast, and potentially 6 times a week. That's another thing. I can't get behind being like, this needs to be taken twice a day,
I think
9 times a week.
A little bit of an ethics.
Take it before every set.
It's like a little bit of an ethics thing there. Like, we're always going to preach, like, eat real food, and like, it doesn't matter how good your supplementation game is if you aren't taking care of the other things. So like, part of me wants to be like, you take this for a very specific purpose to get ready to exercise. If you are not exercising, you don't need to take it. The same way we talk about like people who get I'm in the keto camp or the carb camp. It's like, you have to know that none of these things are necessarily bad or evil. You just have to know when to use them and what they're using them for. And this product is specifically for, if you are getting ready to exercise, what's going to put you in the best position to exercise at the highest intensity possible, so you get the best returns on your investment.
True. All right. Today's episode is also...
Did you tell what episode it is?
Whoa.
What?
You say what episode it is?
Oh, he wants to do a grip test.
Did you do a pre-workout? Did you even take pre-workout for this?
I didn't take pre-workout for this.
Who did you beat?
Of course I did. I hadn't eaten in a month and I crushed him.
Oh, that's right.
Now I ate yesterday and now I'll lose. I'm going to start coming in every week, 4 days.
145.0. I always slip on that thing.
Oh my goodness.
It's built for his tiny freaking hands. What am I supposed to do?
Oh my goodness. My hands are girthy. My fingers are just short. Okay.
My hands are girthy. Famous last words. Get that. What? Look at that elbow. What are you doing with that elbow back there?
I'm not going to do it like that. I'm getting myself ready.
Oh.
This is like waving your butt up in the air for 3 hours before doing a snatch or a clean.
Oh yeah. That's 75 pounds.
149. Not my best effort, but I win.
I was a little bit worried there. All right, what do we got?
I did not feel strong.
That one felt all right. 163.4. All right, carry on. fucking plebeians.
So what's your excuse with him if it's for my hands?
He's a robot. How do you beat a machine? How do you beat a machine?
Oh my God.
What do you think? You're tougher than the sun? Yeah, exactly. What?
I don't wear sunscreen. All right. You were going to say something too? What do you want?
Acknowledge the fact this is episode 199.
Yeah, this is episode 199 of the Misfit podcast. We are going.
Does that include Misfit Project? Is that total podcast? The Misfit podcast?
Just the Misfit podcast. If you're looking for the Misfit Project, that is a separate podcast and has not recorded in 2 years. You have to dig. There's some good stuff in there, though.
It is great.
I still send those links to people all the time. I really do.
You don't have to dig because once you get to it, it just looks like they're new.
Page. Yeah.
They're all brand new.
They're not. All right. Competing during the off season. I think this is one of those episodes where it's very much like a part of our FAQ series, something that we get all the time, asked in a bunch of different ways. How do I approach this? How do I think about it? What do I got to do to my training? There's a lot of aspects to this, and I think it's worth creating a framework for people to go in and say, okay, I have a 6-step process for how I'm going to evaluate this. Our job within the 6 steps is to give you instances, fill in the gaps, talk to you about examples that we've been through. What we want all of you to do is to go in and write out these 6 steps and assess them for yourself. I hope we have anecdotes that you pull out that mean something to you, that can apply to what you're doing, that give context to the steps. But this is a very individual type thing. We'll try to cover as much as we possibly can, but I think it's just important to say that if you're the type that is willing to really sit down with a pen and paper or, an open document or whatever on your computer to really personalize it for yourself and not just write down what we've just said.
I say, if you haven't caught on by now, a lot of our podcasts, one of the things we really talk about is being cerebral or thinking about like why you do what you're doing, like not just doing it because everybody else to your left and right is doing it, but like what's the meaning behind what you're doing? That includes the day to day, picking your training pieces, reflecting on those training pieces afterwards, thinking about your phase, your year. But if you are trying to be a successful athlete, you should have sort of like your guiding light of what your ultimate goal is. Now there are other things that can happen along the way that kind of propel you towards that goal. And, I think one of the things that you'll probably talk about is your training age, because that's one of the things that I think you really bring up as an important point when it's time to decide why you're doing what you do. But, you have to figure out what your context is or why you are doing what you want to do so that you're not just kind of following aimlessly and wondering why 6 months, 2 years down the road, you haven't really improved the way that you'd hope to.
Okay. Step 1, you need to assess the meaning of the competition for you. Okay. Is this competition your CrossFit Games of the year? Is this the biggest thing that you have here? Are you competing against an arch nemesis? Is it a national championship? We used to have Fittest in Maine that happened all the time. What does this competition mean to you? I think this is probably the number one thing that people have to go in and think about. We have athletes who, in terms of meaning for them, they care much more about the CrossFit Games than they do whatever competition this is, but they don't have any fucking money. Yeah. And they go into the competition and they're like, I need to do this. Coach, I got to do this. I can win. Yeah, I can win $10,000 or whatever it is, $20,000. And as a coach and as someone, as all of us have been in this industry for so long, you commiserate with people who are putting in that sort of work and, wondering whether they can pay rent or, I don't know what their grocery bills are like, but they can't be small. So assessing what this competition means to you is going to set you up to answer the rest of the questions. If this competition means next to nothing, then we can go bang, bang, bang down through the rest of the list. And it just sort of is what it is. You go do it and you carry on like nothing happened. You don't really do much in terms of specific prep, all the way to like, this is my CrossFit Games. So we could be talking about, peaking or, doing everything that you can to crush this competition. So there's different context here, but step 1 is identify what this competition means to you and be willing to be vulnerable, because there's nothing worse than it does mean the world to you, but you don't dare to write it down or tell anyone because you don't want to fail.
Yeah. Another thing I like to think about too is just that like going back to training age again, is that experience. Like, are you someone who is aspiring to be a CrossFit Games competitor, but you've never really thrown your hat in the ring outside of like your 5 p.m. affiliate class or like your open gym with your buddies? Are you putting yourself in a situation where you can treat that event as if it is your CrossFit Games? Are you doing what you need to do to both peak for the event, knowing the skill of how to compete? Like, to me, there's a lot of value, especially with newer athletes, learning what it's like to get ready for a competition versus just, hey, I'm going to go do some assault bike and wall ball intervals out in the garage. Like, to me, that's a huge part of assessing that meeting and finding another reason, because what we're not going to tell you, I don't think, in this podcast is like, you can only have this reason for doing a competition. There are many different reasons why someone would want to jump into one like this. And for a lot of the athletes I work with and the ones I encourage to compete a little bit more often are the ones with big dreams, big goals, because they need to get used to that, because the more that you do it, the more it becomes second nature, and you're still going to experience the butterflies, the anxiety, the worry that you're not doing what you need to do. But as you become more seasoned in your training, you realize that like everybody goes through that. And I need to be practicing that just the way I need to be practicing how to get myself wound down after a day of training so I can sleep good at night, or what I need to do on the weekend to prep my meals so I can be fueled the entire week. Part of that just comes with the experience of growing as an athlete and realizing that there's a big difference between the recreational, I'm going to go to, 5 p.m. class 4 or 5 days a week and be really healthy, and I am trying to show people what I can do with my personal fitness, whether that's compete for money or compete against your rival or whatever that is. So to me, a huge part of that meaning is figuring out, what is the number one objective? What are you hoping to take home from this?
Yeah, I think understanding, I think it's important to note that you can, speaking to probably the more experienced end of the spectrum, is that you can compete in a competition for the purpose of like tuning up for your actual CrossFit Games. And I think that's something that's super useful. If the higher level you are, probably the less frequently that needs to happen. And obviously if you have more experience with things like the online qualifiers and then the in-person competition, because there's a lot of things like you kind of have to think the athlete who crushes it in training day in and day out, or most days, and then fall apart during the open or whatever online qualifier you're doing. What's the reason for that? If you're legitimately hammering your daily training, and the events that you are trying to qualify for aren't so far outside of what you're not making an incorrect assessment of your abilities. There's some disconnect between how you execute in training and how you execute when the literal camera is facing you, even if you're at your own gym. So I think along with obviously all the things that you said, there's no one good reason or bad reason to do it. Well, there are bad reasons. There are bad reasons to do competitions, but in general, if you have a good rationale, that's fine. But I think there's also a benefit to thinking of off-season competitions as tune-ups if you are, if your main goal is not that specific competition.
Right. Yeah. I think to split off of that just a little bit, what tune-up could mean. One of the many reasons why I love Wodapalooza is where it's positioned, right?
Yeah, in the year.
Like I want an athlete to go into it and I want to get an assessment it's usually a very well programmed competition. So I get an assessment of energy systems and lifts and, how do they look compared to their former self? If it's confident, whatever. There's a lot that can be taken as a coach when having that sort of competition. Obviously you hope the athlete does well, but as the coach, you're still like, okay, thinking quarterfinals, semifinals, CrossFit Games.
Kind of like,
exactly. Yeah. And then the other part that popped into my head while you were talking is there are people who, even at the highest levels, need to get better at competing. Mm-hmm. We joke about, playing sports with the practice hero, the person who would absolutely light you up in practice and then didn't dare to tackle someone during the football game. It's like, what is happening right now? Like, you should be the best person here and you're the worst. So there's something about going out there and like checking in on yourself and getting that, like what I would consider more of a tune up than a check-in. Like, okay, I can compete, or this is how I feel like, or these are the emotions that we need to address internally after the competition, whatever. Step 2 is very similar, adjacent to step 1, setting realistic expectations. And I'm going to give an example that I think will help people understand that we're not saying like, don't do it if you're going to do bad. one of my remote coaching clients is, I gotta ask him how to say his name, Luka Jukic. And him and his brother, were doing a competition as a partner competition. You have the 9th and I believe 25th fittest men on earth
to try to win.
And the meaning of the competition, I'm sure there's pride in doing the competition in Europe. I'm sure there's pride in the family name. Meaning of the competition is you leave a place like Serbia and you go to a place like Germany and the value of your money can increase. So you have someone taking home 10,000 euros. That sets the meaning, but then there's also the expectations because, he relies on me as a coach to be like, this is what we're going to do before, after, during, whatever. And didn't really change a ton because they were going to go in and mop up. There are CrossFit Games athletes who travel around and mop up, or there's someone who isn't 100% positive about what division they should be in yet, and they're not ready to make that leap. And they know that if they go RX, they're going to go win. If you're in one of those scenarios and it truly is the off season and you are going for money or trying to get more Instagram followers, whatever it is, build your brand, how much you change about your program goes down quite a bit. And we're looking at a scenario where basically all I did was move his test week out a couple of weeks because I didn't want him testing, come back for 3 days and then test again on the weekend and, sort of have that. But there wasn't that much that changed when it went into that, because when he told me what the competition was and who he was doing it with, it's like, okay, we got a much bigger goal here to go into.
Yeah. I think I also have a similar example, in that one of our remote athletes, he was debating between 18-year-old Brady. You've probably seen him on some of our YouTube videos, but it's, hey, I want to go to Wodapalooza. I am actually eligible to be in the 16 to 18-year-old boys division. Should I do that? And my initial response is like, no, you're an 18-year-old. You are in the open division. You're in an individual division for the CrossFit Games and quarterfinals and whatnot. Your goal is eventually long-term to be at the CrossFit Games. You're not helping your cause by waxing a bunch of 16-year-olds who are just physically not developed yet. And and I'm not saying he would win by any means, but I want you competing against people that you want to be on the floor with the best. But can you qualify? And that's a big question, because there's plenty of athletes who would probably perform very well in in-person competition, but can't turn it on in the qualifier, almost kind of like an opposite issue of the practice player sort of deal. And it had nothing to, it had basically the only thing I did was I was like, okay, let's make this as objective as possible. Look at the leaderboard from last year, look at the standings from both the in-person and the qualifier. And it was like, hey, I want you to, while I think it would be awesome that you are competing in the RX division, knowing that you have to really lay it out there to even qualify, I would rather see you lay it out there to qualify, because it's not going to be it's not a gimme that he would qualify. We're redoing workouts all week to make sure he's doing the best that he can, because he needs to learn that as well. But we need to get the competition experience in. And he's an athlete, he's competed before, but it's Wodapalooza, that's about as close as you get to a semifinal trying to qualify for the CrossFit Games. So the value of competing against anyone is better than, hey, try to qualify. You statistically are unlikely to qualify. Good enough. Let's wait until quarterfinals comes around. Yep. And that's not that. So the that's kind of how we made that decision. And the expectations are hey, this is not going to be a gimme. You need to work hard. And then hopefully when we get down into that live in-person competition, we can, we get another assessment of what that sort of atmosphere and competing is like.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, the only thing I was going to set on top of the expectations thing would just be, as important it was for Luka to potentially collect money, build his brand, make sure he can stay financially stable. Brady looking to compete just for the experience of competing. part of one of the things I really like for a competition and why I encourage a lot of my athletes to try and find opportunities to compete is just that like outside of the gym environment that, when you get to the open, you always have that like nervousness or that anxiety around competing again, because you've basically taken a full calendar year and done nothing competing wise outside of like with your buddy in the day to day. And now you give someone the opportunity to practice essentially what you need to be able to do when the open comes around. So you're not nervous when the camera turns on or when someone's counting your reps. So for me, one of the expectations you could set for yourself is like, I want to get comfortable with this, what feels like a very, staged environment, as opposed to me just being able to like put some plates on my bar, pull the rower out, turn the clock on and go. There's a lot of value in putting yourself up against something that has what feels like an extra layer of intensity or extra layer of care, because it's, you're putting out a score that other people may see or want to compare against and be like, all right, I don't want to be that person who everyone knows my name, but then I throw up a dud and what the hell happened here? So for me, a lot of that too is just getting back to that game experience and making sure that, you push yourself into a realm that's uncomfortable from time to time, so that when those things come up that you really do want to do, you're practiced and it's not something new to you.
Right. I would say the last piece that we need to cover before moving to step 3 is just, if you know you're going to compete and it's smack dab in the middle of your off season and you are a high level athlete, if you're quarterfinals, semifinals, any of these games, these competitions where you're truly trying to peak and you're going all in, and that, emotional and physical effort that is put out there really kind of ends your season. And then you take a little bit of time off, which we recommend for most of our athletes to do. Your expectations and obsessing over someone is going to think less of me, I'm going to think less of myself if games me is not at Wodapalooza or Dubai or wherever it is. And again, that goes back to setting the meeting and setting the expectations, seeing the whole season, seeing the forest through the trees, all that. If you are going into these things and this isn't your pinnacle, the idea that you shouldn't do them unless you're going to win or something like that, I think is a little bit false. So I think it's important for people to create context for the story that they're telling themselves, that, okay, I just took a month off. Why did I not absolutely obliterate everyone in the qualifier like I thought I was going to? Take a couple of steps back and look, and the answer is pretty obvious. Now, you want to know what? Anyone who's listening to this is like, fuck you, why are you talking shit about me? We love how competitive you are. We are here to be that other voice. Hold on to that. Hold on to the competition. Be fucking petty. Be crazy about it. We see our examples of the best athletes in the world. That's why the coaches can be there to be like, let's take it easy. So don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Just make sure you have someone in your corner that is going to say to you, hey, we're working on this. We're working on your aerobic engine right now. And yeah, your Fran time or whatever isn't what it could be, but it will be again next year.
Yeah.
Like in a bit. So I think that's important context. All right. We have step number 3. So you've assessed your meaning. You've set realistic expectations. Now we need to adjust our training schedule based on those things. I would say, as we zoom out, the longest that you should be specifically prepping for a competition is in that 7-week type range. We can plus or minus a little bit here, depending on who you are as an athlete, depending on the days of the competition. If it was really weird and they were smack dab in the middle of the week, maybe some of this would be different. And let's say this is your mountaintop. We are looking to peak our volume and the Hell Week phase and the put your face off the wall intentionally phase. We're looking for that to be somewhere around the middle.
Yeah.
We want to taper down, not in intensity and not necessarily in, the weight that we're lifting, but we want to taper down in that volume so that you really get to start to use the things that you've built in those first 3 or 4 weeks, and then really hit the ground running and understand that in those final couple of weeks, I'm going to zero in on that one piece and I'm going to fucking obliterate it, because I know that that's what it takes to be great at competing.
And the big reason behind that is, the stress response your body has. You want to put yourself up against something that's very, very challenging, and then give your body the time it needs to heal. So you super compensate for that really heavy load. So, one of the things I did get a little pushback with in the last couple of years is like, how come the worst week is like 3 weeks away from the competition? Wouldn't it be like the week before? And, you know, one of the things that's really important, and when we talk about, kind of joke about all the time on this podcast, is that like you gave a CrossFitter the actual time they needed to heal, they'd be actually superhuman. But because we're constantly in the pursuit of getting better and better, we're basically sort of recharging, but never recharging our battery to 100%. So when you have an opportunity to peak for something, when you know the set schedule, you can create that super compensation to make sure that you are peaked and you are at that like damn near 100% on game day, as opposed to being like, you know, I'm still feeling last week and a half ago. This middle of your block, if you're talking about like you want to think about like a competition prep type of thing, allows your body to heal. And still, it's not going to be easy. You're not saying like take 3 weeks off before your competition. We're just going to dial in the volume so that your body has more time to heal and kind of adapt from the training without really, you know, putting you in a hole.
Most competitions, the volume's not that crazy.
No.
I mean, Hunter got his taste this year of coaching at the CrossFit Games. It's like the volume is of sitting on plyo boxes in the back. Like that's
pretty tiring.
That's the fucking volume. And I mean, we intentionally put a week or two of your year is not good for you. It's not good for your body. It's not good at all. No. But I mean, buds is not good for you. That's for damn sure. People come out of it. They got 19 stress fractures. Their circadian clock is fucked for 2 years, but they come out the other side of it a different person. They're aware of their capabilities. They're aware of those times when your body says, or your mind says no, and you should fucking do it anyways. Like there's something about going through that. And that's why we, you know, sort of have that nod to it and call it Hell Week. There's something about an athlete saying, you know what? That wasn't that fucking bad. Like I can do this, that sort of thing. We do that on purpose.
Yep. I think one important note to that is you have to keep, obviously if you're, you know, with the pen and paper kind of doing this on your own, your step 3, what was the step called again?
Adjust your training schedule.
Adjust your training schedule. You're adjusting that based on you, based on the competition that you're peaking for and the specifics of that competition. So, and the reason I bring that up is like, think about kind of maybe the less extreme end for somebody who might be listening. And that's, I'm peaking for the Open. And we'll assume that it's 3 weeks like it was last year. You don't necessarily need to be doing 4 training pieces a day leading up to the Open, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to hammer, like obliterate one single workout 2, maybe 3 times over the course of 3 different workouts, 2 or 3 times.
It's like spreading test week out for 5 weeks instead of 1.
So you have to, I would just say that like with that maybe it's not necessarily increasing the total like number of training pieces.
It's a good thing this podcast is about competing during the off season.
Yes. Like the Hatchet folks, maybe it's a similar number of pieces. Maybe it's 2 conditioning pieces and a lift instead of kind of a lift, conditioning, and skill, whatever. The point is that you were adjusting your training schedule for the competition that you're about to do. You're not doing CrossFit Games Hell Week before the mains fittest, you know, for example.
Right. I mean, some people go to a fundraiser that's just Grace or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. And obviously, you know, Hell Week for Grace may or may not fit the bill.
101.
So the opposite side of this spectrum is, it's not your games. It is a tune-up. It's something where you're just going in to see where you're at. We're looking at the 6 weeks prior to the competition, not the week of competition, status quo, where you're at in your season. We hope you're at misfitathletics.com and, you know, phase 2, 3, 4, and you're doing your thing. You're improving. You are doing everything on purpose. You know, the long game is being taken into account, and you just go and enjoy yourself and see where you're at as an athlete. That athlete is looking at really only applying that tapering volume to the week of the competition. So let's say your competition starts on a Friday. We are going to ask athletes Monday and Tuesday to do typical volume minus extra pieces. Yep. So you go in and you either take a non-mandatory piece and replace a mandatory piece with it, or you just go in and you don't even look at like the list once it says now choose whatever the following. You're going in, and not only are you prepping yourself for the competition physically by having less volume on that weekend, but you're understanding the skill of attacking a singular specific workout. So that would be Monday and Tuesday. We will get to the week of what you would do on that Thursday, but this is the opposite end of the spectrum of someone who's doing their 7-week peaking schedule. My question for you two is I want an example from each of you of someone who's somewhere in the middle, what you would recommend for someone who's, taking it pretty damn seriously, but again, it's not their pinnacle, but it's also not a throwaway.
I actually had a really good conversation with one of my teenagers who's trying to compete in that same division Brady's in, that 16 to 18. And one of the things that she sort of said to me was it's kind of funny that I have to do something I really don't like, meaning a qualifier, to do something I really do like, which is compete in person. And I was like, yeah, that is kind of a unique part of our sport that you have to do this is really uncomfortable and sterile, and you're not around a bunch of people. You're literally just exercising in front of the camera.
Fucking life lessons, man. Jeez.
But to me, and I was like, you're absolutely right about that. And, for that reason, we aren't going to necessarily put the qualifier workout on the back burner, because she does need to do well to be able to punch her ticket, being one of the younger girls in that division. But that doesn't mean we stop training. That doesn't mean we just do a qualifier workout. We work intensely for, I think the workouts range from 6 minutes to 18 minutes at the most. We're still going to train. We're just going to put the eggs in the basket of, hey, we're going to make sure you warm up really well, you prime yourself, you hit that piece really well. And
you
then
didn't
we
do a 5x5 back squat or run 10 miles before.
Yeah, you're not going to be, you're not going to do something silly. You're not going to put yourself up against a 60-minute running piece, but you might be able to get away with, all right, I was going to, do some overhead squat skill work, and then I was going to hit some of my positional snatch work, and then I'll do the qualifier, and then maybe I'll do one other thing if I feel like it. And to me, what's really important, if this isn't your absolute games, your CrossFit version, the games, that you ask yourself, all right, am I going to push myself in the raw opposite direction of where I'm trying to head, which is to get back to the games or get to this by only doing the qualifier? That's good enough for this bit. And part of my job is to help explain to that person that, we're not only focused just on this one qualifier. I do want you to care, and I want us to kind of put the qualifier as our objective right now, but big picture, we still have the CrossFit Games we're training for, 8 months from now. And that is a long ways away. You got to think about this. Every single day that you don't train for your big CrossFit Games or whatever that is one day less that you have to prepare for. And one of the things that we really strongly believe in is if you are given the date of the test and you have all this time, that you should maximize to that time to the best of your potential, knowing that there might be ebbs and flows in your training, but you can't just say, all right, I'm completely abandoning all of my training just to hit, 1 or 2 qualifier workouts a day.
Right.
Yeah, I'll continue to use Brady as an example, and he's similar, but I would say a little bit different, because we're not really training. That'll adjust this week, because this is the last week that the scores are being submitted, so we're only going to retest so many times. But we've effectively treated since Thursday or Friday, whenever it was, through this whole thing as hey, your sole focus is on qualifying for your division, and caveat, doing placing as high as you can, because we don't know if it's the open, where it's you could probably just do the workout once and you'll be in the top 10%. With the open, we're pretty confident in that.
It's not a great lesson for 99% of athletes though, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's getting the reps in, because, and there are different levels of, we're talking about, I guess, tapering for a competition. It's obviously dependent on how important the competition is, how difficult it is to qualify, and all of those things play a role. So we don't really know. We're pretty confident qualification is a thing, but it's not guaranteed. And it's just a good lesson in general. The days of one and done are effectively gone in the sport. You need to be able and willing to retest multiple workouts multiple times. You need to be able to mentally go 5 days, not necessarily in a row, where you're just doing the same 4 fucking workouts over and over. And you hear it all the time. It's I want to get back to training. It's you haven't earned your training yet. You were training before, you got to qualify. Now's the time to see what you've got. I think for the open, that'll be the opportunity to be okay, this is a different style of preparing for a competition.
Strike 2. You bring up the open again in strike 3. Ted's going to hit a foghorn button.
Hey, we're not very, we'll hit the workout, the open workout on Friday, but training is going to continue like normal. Whereas this, for Wodapalooza,
but what are you going to do? So to make sure that we're sticking with the episode, you guys have gone on a bit of a qualifier tangent. how are you going to have him prep for the competition?
The competition itself will be for this year, that'll be like kind of his CrossFit games.
Okay.
So it's not going to be like, we know we're going to quarterfinals.
Yep.
We're pretty confident we're not going to semifinals this year.
Yep.
Although like yeah. The point is, yeah, sorry. We've got like the longer term plan right now.
Yeah,
the reasonable CrossFit games is hammer the 16 to 18 division at Wodapalooza. Get the experience of tapering into prepping for the competition experience itself, and then what happens after, which obviously we'll get to later on.
I think unique about him too is that Brady fully realizes that he's an 18-year-old competing against 25, 26, 27-year-old men.
Right.
And he's not there yet. So that his long game's a little bit longer than most people. A lot of people like to think 1 or 2 seasons ahead. Brady might be a handful of seasons away from actually being physically mature enough to actually compete with those men. But at the same time, there's a lot of value in both competing at the teenage division at Wodapalooza, because it's basically going to be his CrossFit games, as well as potentially throwing his hat in the ring with other open field competitions against individual men to see where he can make up ground or see where those gaps lie between where he is currently and, some things he's really good at and right in par with everybody else, and some things where he's, severely lacking behind. And it essentially serves as an opportunity for him to be like, oh yeah, I'm still not quite where I need to be with my clean and jerk. Or I thought my ability to do toes to bar was good, but apparently I didn't have the status or the level, if you're thinking like Madden ratings. I don't have the level of toes to bar that I thought I had. I thought I was at like a 90 and I'm actually at like a 75. Like I'm not quite there yet. So, he is a little bit of a unique athlete in the fact that he is a handful of years away, but that doesn't mean that you just like wait
I think it
until
just
that happens.
gives us a little bit more opportunity and time to, hey, this is here's scenario A. We got to practice this. Here's scenario B. Here's scenario C. Like you have to learn to compete through a variety of kind of scenarios, whether it's online, in person, whatever it is.
Yep. So just to summarize real quick, if this is your pinnacle, you become B-Rabbit, you create that threshold. Brady should know 7 weeks before Wodapalooza what that Monday is. And you do walk into the gym with your hood up or something like that. And there's just, when you cross through that threshold, I am now preparing for this specific thing. There's just a bit of an uptick in, your buy-in and all that good stuff. If you're middle of the road, if you're, this isn't your pinnacle, but it still means a lot to you, we can zoom that out a little bit. We can zoom it in a little bit and say, okay, you become B-Rabbit with 3 weeks to go. 3 weeks to go. I am not going to do very many of the extras. I'm going to hone in on intensity and what this needs to be like. What happens when I do some guess and check with warm up and cool down? What feels best for me? How do I warm up for this? If I do have someone judging my depth, does that piss me off and make me want them to go away so I can go back to cheating my reps? Whatever it is. And then we've already talked about it, even if it is just a bit of a throwaway, if we're talking about, the tune-up that Hunter brought up, I want to see a little bit of that pep in your step the week of the competition. It's a good segue into into step 4, which is planning out the details of your week of. And I mean, down to the fucking, I'm waking up at this time, I'm going to bed at this time. This is when I'm traveling. If I'm traveling, I'm going to take my walk when I get there, doing all these things. You set this up and you start to visualize and you start to have a plan and a routine, then you're not going to be as anxious. You're not going to be as, I didn't bring any food for the plane and I'm going to Dubai and it's 96 hours to get there.
I got my snacks in the airport again.
I lost 14 pounds on the airplane, like shit like that. So the week of, no matter what, you're setting the tone for, your personal attitude. We've talked about this in other episodes. You are, letting other people know, sorry, I might be a little indifferent to basically every normal thing that a human being should be aware of, personal relationships, whatever it is. You need to prepare for that to be what's going on. I just think it's really helpful to get yourself started and going to that place prior to 3, 2, 1, go that first time.
Yeah. To me, when you're getting ready to the week of the competition, you're ramping up for every single decision you make for that entire week. Is it, does this make me give me a better chance to compete this week, or is this going to hurt me in the long run? So you've taken the entire season up to that point to figure out, all right, what foods do I like to eat? How much sleep do I need? How do I like to warm up? How do I like to cool down? You now have all that information that you've built over the last X amount of weeks. You're now trying to do that and see if you can find 1 more % in that week leading up. If I make sure that I'm in bed with my phone off by 8:30 p.m. every single night in the 5 nights leading up, am I giving myself the best opportunity to get the best performance on game day? Like, you've used the entire season up to that point to kind of guess and check and experiment what your body needs and what it doesn't need. And when you get to that week, there's no, hey, I'll help you move that couch, or I'm happy to kind of hang out and coach that extra hour open gym.
Right.
I'm only doing the things that are helping me compete. And, you often hear people talk about their athletic experience and, after they're all done, as like, I was very, very selfish. But in order to be able to do your absolute best, it is fine to give yourself permission for a small amount of time to really just think about you and put you first. Because if you aren't doing that, I'm sorry, but you're not there to win. You're there to collect your t-shirt or your bib or whatever other thing that you earned.
Just make sure that people in your life know that it's on purpose.
Of course, you have to communicate design. That. And that's, that goes back to when you're thinking about assessing the meaning and putting it out in the universe, that the people who are around you are listening to you and saying, all right, like, I have this date circled on the calendar. I'm sorry, but like, this is the week where I'm not going to be very fun to be around. And, I'm going to want to eat like, I don't know, Brussels sprouts and chicken for every meal. And you're going to have to either order your own or own your own meal, or that's what we're eating for dinner. So, that week of, I'm thinking about every 1% thing that I could do to get better. And, one of the things we laughed about was, Matt Frazier not using a steak knife like the week leading up to a competition, or like, I'm not going to do a trail run or ride my motorcycle, or things that potentially could put you against doing your best at the competition. So for me, that I'm talking to those athletes about, all right, what 1% things are we doing to up the ante so that you really are in the best shape you can be to compete that week?
I'd say the two sides of the spectrum. One's more like mental / just preparatory. The other's training. You're not going to get much fitter, but you can certainly fuck things up. If you like, man,
I do Murph before games.
Yeah, man, I really need to work on my pull-ups, so I better do Murph. Like, I better do 100 chest to bar pull-ups on Monday.
Ben Smith taught us one year at regionals, do not do Murph, and then go to regionals.
You got it. Thanks, respectfully. So you can't. All right, over there, you need a nap.
Ted's gonna cut that out, and then Sherp's just gonna be laughing, and they're gonna be like, "What just happened?"
So the week of go ahead, do it, yeah. Week of, don't overdo it, but also use it as an opportunity to, hey, dial in the things that you are going to be doing over the weekend, which is warming up super well, cooling down super well afterwards, kind of like maybe a little bit of reflection on how things went and whatnot. But you need to get in that habit. If you're not, hopefully you're already in that habit, but especially in the week before, like, you need to kind of be thinking about what your routine might look like over the weekend. And then the second thing is more just like, maybe this is me personally, like what I would personally do is that, like, the little things like packing, like knowing where you're laying over, how you're getting like your rental car, where you're staying at, how far it is from the venue, like little stressors like that you're just like, that you might not think about can contribute, are almost certainly going to only be negative. They'll, if you take care of them, it'll just be like, wow, that was smooth. But if you don't take care of them, it's like, this is the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life, because you're already obviously stressed about competing itself. You got to eliminate as many of the other variables outside of training, outside of the actual competition, as you can.
For sure. I would say brass tacks, because this is a very specific question that we get. If your competition starts on a Friday, you're going to train Monday and Tuesday. Okay. Lower volume, but still training. We're not going to grind through anything. We're not going to have a final kick and a bitch work piece in that final round. You're going to leave something on the table, and you're going to transfer some of that physical energy to the mental energy of, am I to depth? Am I getting hip extension in my chest to bar pull-ups? Think about fine tuning what you're doing within your training. If that means taking 5%, 10% off the barbell, within your lifts, whatever, that's totally fine. But we are still training Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, active recovery day. You get the flush, you get all that good stuff. You get the mobility. Thursday, we're doing a primer day. We typically put an 10-minute EMOM of 80% singles of, kind of whatever, it's your favorite lift. Sometimes people have a lift that's coming up in the competition they already know about. We can sub that in. We like the power clean and the power snatch because of the metabolic demand of them, but not necessarily the CNS demand. We can lift and be strong and feel snappy, but not have the squatting portion in there, not having the overload with the deadlift or, potentially, a front squat or a back squat could be a little bit of an issue, but not completely off the table. Then we are going to do a short AMRAP type workout that can be, this is important, adjusted while you're doing the workout. And I typically do this if I'm coaching an athlete in person. So I walk around and I say, all right, we're doing a 5-minute AMRAP. It's a triplet. Point out one of the athletes, say, okay, you get to pick the machine, you get to pick the gymnastics movement, and you get to pick the barbell movement. We're going to go through. And again, if it lines up well with the competition, if an athlete wants to, get in the groove of a front squat or whatever, throw it in there. It's not a big deal. It should be a merry-go-round type workout, meaning like every single round, it's easy to do unbroken and the transition is right there. Now, why would you stop the workout? You would stop the workout if you feel like you are starting to grind, because obviously at a certain point in merry-go-round workouts, it switches to mental and you're like, do I have what it takes to keep doing, 109 rounds over and over and over? And that is in and of itself a like serious offshoot of intensity. So what we're looking for is that if you're getting into it and we wrote 6 minutes or 7 minutes or 8 minutes and you're 4 or 5 in and you know that next round is going to be a grind, we just cut it off.
Stop. Yeah.
We just stop. Like, you don't know how you're going to feel on that day. You don't know how you're going to feel compared to the other people in the room who helped you pick the movements. Don't grind through anything. No final kick, no nothing. We're looking to reach that intensity that we would get, in a really intense workout, but then not stay there for a second. We get to that point and then we just back off and we're done. We're always going to finish with another flush. Super important to get back onto a machine. Don't recommend running. You could mix walking with whatever machine you're doing. And then we do, sort of a head to toe mobility check where you grab some dumbbells and you deadlift them and you squat them and you clean them and you press them and you bench. You just go through and hang out in positions and see, is anything chirping at me right now, talking to me? And then obviously you do the specific mobility there. If your competition starts on a Saturday, pretty simple. We train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like we just said with Monday and Tuesday. We have our active recovery on Thursday, and then Friday is your primer day. This is what we recommend for athletes across the board.
Yep.
Like 100% across the board. And
I'm traveling. What do I do?
So if you're traveling, I know that this is a financial conversation. So if you cannot be there the 36 hours before, if you can't get there the night before, the day before, hopefully you're tracking on what that means.
Yeah.
Then we got to make some adjustments here, but the hope is that you do end up going to a gym. What's great? You can run burpee and you're probably standing at a hotel with dumbbells. Like we could still prime these things.
Yep.
Still possible in a lot of scenarios if it is that day, but we really do recommend that someone, if you're competing on a Saturday, you travel on a Thursday, there's also canceled flights and all that jazz.
Stressors like he was talking about a minute ago.
Exactly.
Just things you don't want to be
so
dealing
getting
with.
yourself there, a day or two before. I will say some athletes I know get there way too early and become a fucking basket case. So,
Yeah.
9 days early might not be worth it unless you're trying to alter your circadian rhythm. But that is the nuts and bolts of what that week of looks like for an athlete. And again, really try to personalize this and what we mean by it. An example would be if you can't do muscle ups and they come up on the site, or if you can do a couple and you got 30 in a workout, the idea that you're supposed to try and get those done that week, it's going to fuck with your head. Probably gonna fuck with your shoulder potentially.
Mobility.
Like there are certain things, like if you hate it, if you know you're gonna have a sour taste in your mouth, take that movement, throw it in the trash, put your favorite movement in there. It's fitness.
The only thing I was going to add to what you said about the merry-go-round workout is you try to find things that probably you like doing and things that kind of promote a good range of motion. So like one of the things I can think about when we were at the Granite Games is we did I think it was like a power snatch, small set of pull-ups and maybe I don't know, I think it was rowing was the third movement, but just something that promoted large ranges of motion, put you through a full squat, through a full pull, both upper body and lower body. Just, again, you don't want to get sore, so don't get to the point where you feel like you're building too much volume in, but I would just say one little asterisk there is to kind of think about the range of motion. And if there are movements in our sport that have a much larger range of motion than others, and I would try to stick to the larger range of motion so that you know that your hips are feeling good, your ankles, your knees, your shoulders, all those things.
You good?
Next.
All right. So now we're sort of moving on a bit, but I do like the idea, again, we've talked about it, of scheduling and visualization and all that good stuff. So some of this prep can be done before the competition, but step 5 is just the competition itself. And again, everything that we've laid out before this should inform how you compete, how you feel when you compete. Again, those expectations that you're setting for yourself and what they mean during the competition. If somebody else has expectations on you, if you are going to be cut from your sponsorship team, if you have a, I don't know, psycho sports dad, if you know, any of these scenarios are in there, they have no place in your brain when you're competing. The only fucking person that you answer to is yourself. And the only thing that you answer to is your effort, what you put out there. Are you going to be proud of what's happening right now? Can you remember in the moment I am competing? Because, I mean, that's one of the hardest things that happens in competition, right? You use so many reps in the off season. Basically 99.99999% of your reps are not in competition. So can you remember when the pain shows up, when, you know, you're annoyed by this person's doing better than you, or that person's doing better than you, or they're catching up to you, whatever it is, can you remember where you are and why you're doing it? Those are the things, those are the expectations that you're setting for yourself. You are the only person that you need to answer to. And there's some things that are really holding you back if you are answering to someone else or something else. It just doesn't.
There's just not room in your brain space to be able to recruit the amount of intensity you want to do your absolute best of that competition. Yeah. You don't have time for that stuff. You're not thinking about, you know, whether or not that you've, you know, brought an extra meal for yourself. Like that should already be taken care of. We're talking about the details leading up. You shouldn't be thinking about, you know, is so-and-so worried about, am I going to miss my like Monday coaching class if like whatever reason my flight's delayed? Like you have to be so zeroed in on what's coming next and nothing else. You know, one of the things that I thought that we really tried to make clear with, you know, Caroline and, you know, the teenagers that we were competing with and Roy and a few other people is just like, we're only thinking about what's coming up next. That's all of our investment is what's going to get us prepared to do this next thing. How are we going to approach the next thing? And then it's go out there and execute. And when you execute, just be proud of how you did and you do it to the best of your ability. And the second it's done, it's like it never happened and we're on to the next thing. Because I do think a big part of that competition is just trying to stay in the moment. And for a lot of us with the way we live in the 21st century and all these other things that distract us 24/7, it's very difficult. And it's not something we practice often. So it really does take a moment to really dial that in. But when you're getting ready to compete, you're solely focused on, you know, what am I going to do? How am I going to execute? And can I make myself proud by doing this piece and not worrying about the noise that's around you? Because, you know, you're going to go there, your heat's going to be delayed. There's going to be, all right, you're going to warm up 4 hours before your event. There are going to be other things that kind of throw you off your game. But if you're just solely invested on making sure that you're like in it, fully invested, those things don't become things you concern yourself with. You just, there's no effort or energy like wanted to be wasted on thinking about those things. You want to be thinking about the only thing that matters, which is that next event.
Yeah, I think the trying to kind of keep in perspective the things you can control is super important. And that it sounds kind of cliche, and it is, but there's value in that. You have to, I think one of the like kind of a misnomer off a lot of times is like, hey, just as long as you're like happy, you're, you know, compete happy, like you're good. And it's there.
What'd you say? I fell asleep.
There's there's value in that, but you have to hold yourself to some sort of standard. And that's not necessarily like I need to finish this place or better, but I think, I don't remember which one of you said it. You have to be proud of your effort. And there's a lot to be,
you are setting a personal standard.
Correct.
That's exactly what you just said. And it's exactly what you meant.
Yes. So you're setting that standard for you. If it means like I'm proud of my effort, that's good. If it's a specific metric, that's fine too. But it is only yours and it only belongs to you. And that's because you have control over it. It doesn't have control over you. So I think setting that standard and just recognizing and realizing that things are going to like you are going to get wrenches thrown at you all weekend, whether wrenches thrown. Yeah. Gotta cut that out too. Kids show. I hit the wall ball target. No, you didn't. No rep. You got to run that way. Oh, hey, you have to like run across the finish line. You forgot about that. Hey, your heat time's delayed 20 minutes. It's raining. Now it's a front rack walking lunge instead of an overhead walking lunge like at Wadapalooza. Like there are going to be so many little factors that you have just no control over. But I think if you kind of ground yourself with that, am I doing the best that I can? Am I proud of my effort? And do I have I taken ownership of this weekend for myself? And that's different than I'm only going to run my own race. We talk about that a lot. There can't ignore the other 20 people on the floor. But the point is that you have ownership and you have responsibility of yourself and your effort over the course of the weekend.
So you are sitting down, you've got your pen and paper. You got to understand which of these mantras that we're addressing apply to you. One that pops into my head that I've known throughout my entire sports career. And I just like wish other people knew it, is that adrenaline is my friend. Like write that down on a piece of paper. It's a hell of a drug. I'm telling you right now, if you harness the power of adrenaline, we're talking about these, people smoking PCP and lifting cars over their head. Adrenaline is in there. It's in you. It is absolutely insane if you learn to use it. It also, you flip the coin over and it's the same coin, and it's anxiety, and it's why do I feel this way, and why do I feel like I took beta alanine even though I didn't.
It's like the Spider-Mans pointing at each other.
It really is. And it's funny because again, it's the same hormone within our bodies. And if you learn to harness it and use it and not use it and then have it come out afterwards. That's one thing that we see that sucks. You see that rage, that passion come out when someone fails. And it's like, that was fucking swimming around in there prior to your 1 rep max lift or your 50 cal assault bike or whatever it is. So, think about the challenges that you've faced. Even if you haven't competed before, there's a pretty damn good chance that you've had a time in life where this type of stuff has shown up. You struggle with it, acknowledge that you struggle with it, and write it down. Like, I am going to control what I can. I am going to make sure that I am proud of my own effort. These other expectations that people are putting on me, could I rebrand those as motivation? You know what I mean? Like I do want to make so-and-so proud when I'm out there, that sort of thing, but rebranding it from, they're going to hate me if I don't do well, which is either insane or they're insane.
And sorry, go ahead.
I'll say this isn't the Last Dance podcast, but all I can think of is that episode where, Michael Jordan had a half against somebody and he was like, oh, I'll take Michael or whatever. And like, all he said was like, good game, Mike. But Michael turned that into like, that guy said, fuck you and fuck your mother and a bunch of other things that are inappropriate. And he's just like, I'm going to go murder this man in the second half. And he drops like 38 in the second half because he
admitted that he was lying.
Yeah, he's like, I just made that up because
none of that happened.
None of that happened. But like, seriously though, think about the bitter taste in the mouth you have at the end of a workout where you're like, man, I really should have kicked it 1 round sooner. I should have hung on for 5 more touch and go and I would have beat so-and-so in this random class. But like those training experiences, you have so many of them. Call upon them and use them to your advantage. It's not just, I know I can hang on to 8. It's, hey, I remember that last time where it was a 400-meter run and I let someone pass me in the last 50 meters. I'm never going to let that happen again. And if I get into this race and I can see the finish line, I'm literally going to kill myself going to that line so that no one passes me the last second. And I think the best in any sport does that. How they do it may be more positive or more negative, but they have that thing they latch onto and that helps propel them so they don't make the same mistake more than once. So they don't have that, that moment where like, oh, I really should have done that one thing and I didn't do it.
When he says literally, he means figuratively.
Figuratively. I'm going to start using that one.
Literally.
Literally.
He literally means figuratively.
He literally means figuratively.
You still got something swimming around in there? Yeah, all right. So this next step is very important. And the reason why it's part of this conversation and not a whole other podcast on what happens when you have post-competition depression and all that, we'll cover that later. But these expectations of laying out that when you get done this competition, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be wrecked from it. You're not going to notice because sometimes your body's not wrecked. And then some random Wednesday, 2 weeks out, you lose your shit and you don't know why. And you're the worst CrossFitter ever. And your coach is a dickhead and whatever it is. Understand that those things do happen when it comes to competition. When you have this level of training and then you go put your eggs into this basket and it's one event or it's, 3 workouts or 5 workouts or whatever it is that's there, it takes such a toll on you to go in and go through that and then come out the other side and be like, I'm not as excited as I was during competition prep or whatever. And allowing yourself to know that you are going to potentially have a bad day mixed in is not a big deal. Going into it and saying, no matter how well I do, I'm going to write down every single thing that I did wrong in that competition and how I'm going to do better in the next one, potentially without even getting fitter. The rookie mistakes of not running past the finish line or knowing where your competitors are, blah, blah, blah. Have a plan ready for that post competition. Think to yourself, okay, do I just all this just disappear? Did it never happen in my head? And then I start over and I just keep having this cycle of it not being what I want it to be. Make a plan for yourself. And if you're the type of person that needs to show somebody else, show your coach, show your training partner, hey, we're going to have a powwow. We're going to talk about dumb things like, I went 9 and 7 instead of 10 and 6. I'm an idiot. Like stuff like that. That stuff matters to the best of the best athletes. So be ready for the letdown, the come down, whatever you want to call it. And then be ready to really self-assess no matter what with the competition.
Yeah. The thing that I always try to get athletes to do directly after, in addition to reflecting upon their performance and thinking about it, is just taking some time to do things that you like. And, this is a touchy subject for us a little bit because we have athletes that, if they were given a bunch of free time, they're probably going to want to exercise. And we're like, no, like get out of the gym, find other ways to move around. So, one of the things that I would like to see my athletes try to do, and something I encourage, is like, there must be something physical that you enjoy doing that's not 21, 15, 9 thrusters and pull-ups. Like, can you do that for a little while?
There's a fucking lot I enjoy more than that.
Can you go for a hike in the woods with your dogs? Or can you take the family on a vacation, go to the beach, something, and just have like long walks on the beach or whatever? Just find something that's not super stressful.
Scented candles.
Because you just spent so much time ramping yourself up in this like hyper alert, hyper like active state. And if you can't sustain that for a long time, that's the thing that honestly I think bites a lot of athletes in the ass, is they don't take enough time at the end of their season or end of their competition to allow their body to heal, to allow their mind to heal, to actually give the time needed for proper reflection. Some of the things that we've talked about on former podcasts is that in order to have really deep thoughts, you got to be bored. You got to have these situations where you're like out walking by yourself and all of a sudden this random idea pops in your mind. And those are when those learning moments happen and you don't continue to perpetuate the same mistakes over and over again. And it's a shame because we see so many athletes who, we really want to see them do well. And we really think they have the potential to potentially either podium or, jump 15 places from one season to the next, but they don't give themselves the time they need to make that assessment and to take that time to heal so they can be ready for the next season. No, they're not letting their shoulder heal. They're not getting surgery they needed to putting off another season. It's just a bummer because there are athletes who are knocking on that door of that next level and just will never do that because they refuse to take the time they need to properly just basically chill the fuck out.
My thoughts on this are, I'll just kind of apply it to one specific instance, and that's if things go really poorly, because more often than not, if things go well, that's, I don't want to say it's like not the post kind of competition blues, whatever it is, aren't maybe quite as prevalent, but the odds are like if you're experiencing that, things didn't go as well as you had hoped. And one of the best, I've been reading a lot on stuff like this, but one of the best things that you can do to overcome, this is kind of like a psychological idea. One of the things you can do to overcome trauma, and what's oftentimes recommended by like therapists, is that you kind of have to confront and relive in as much detail as possible how and when things like went wrong and went poorly. And it's not always I fucked up by going 9 and 7 instead of 10 and 6. It's what preceded that. It's digging a little bit. It's kind of finding, like, going into the root of that problem. And maybe it's deeper. Maybe it's more like, I know that in my head, I did not send all of the assault bike send pieces over the course of this year that coach told me to, because like you as the individual, when Like you can make, whether you verbalize it or not in your head, your psyche is making the honest assessment of how well you prepared, like, and that won't lie. So if things go poorly, the benefit of kind of trying to relive a little bit and kind of revisit the things that went poorly during the competition and maybe even before, and then just kind of allowing whatever happens emotionally to happen. If it's really upsetting and like crying is your thing, like send it. Like you have to not only, I'm a big crier. But you relive it, you try to, you project it in your mind in as much detail as possible. And then you really think about it and you allow the emotions that come with it to kind of, to propagate and to like come alive. And I think that's one of that's a really good piece of advice, especially if things don't go as well as you wanted them to.
Yeah. The alternative here, if you're going to continue to let traumatic experiences like live in the back of your brain, is you're letting the inmates run the asylum.
Right.
And that is the type of thing where it's not a, an if, but a when, like that post-competition blues. You're not going through these steps to figure out what happened. And that's why things are showing up. And again, this is something that, we can learn much easier within the gym. We can allow ourselves to learn in the gym because we want to get better as athletes. And then our hope as coaches and beyond that, just fucking normal ass people, we hope it permeates into your personal life. That's, one of the reasons why the three of us are so passionate about what we do within the gym and are nuts enough to coach CrossFit Games athletes, is there's something deeper hidden behind all of this stuff. And one of the ways that you can learn it is by putting yourself through the like crowd going, oh, when you drop that clean and jerk that you almost had over your head.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is important.
Cheer.
Yeah.
I think we did it.
I think so too.
I don't think there are any
I'm
final
done, did
thoughts.
it.
The only final thought that I can think of is that you should head to properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit to save on the
These guys
brand
live?
spanking new. These bad boys are live because we're in the future. They're
Yes.
live right now at properfuel.co. You can also get your complete post-workout nutrition solution, Proper Recovery, at the same site. And if you buy them together, you save money. Holy shit. Also a shout out to our usual other show sponsors, sharpentheaxeco.com. We got some new gear out right freaking now. Code word Keala, Keala.
Comes with a nice turmeric stain right in
Yes,
the middle.
yes, it
Two
does.
of them,
Hunter will
actually.
stain your
I'll
shirt
stain
with
your
turmeric.
shirt.
Code word Keala, Keala. You save money. We donate money. It's great.
Win-win.
Do it. PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit to save on any and all orders. And the best way to support this podcast and what we do is by heading to misfitathletics.com for your individual programming needs, teammisfit.com for your affiliate programming needs. Either of those are both on the SugarWOD marketplace, and you can try just about everything that we do for free for 2 weeks. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you thought about this episode, what you would like to hear next for a topic or a guest, whatever it is, and we'll see you next time.